Okay, it's my pleasure to have with us today Dr. Glenn Schumock, who is professor and dean at the University of Illinois in Chicago College of Pharmacy. He is a research expert in the area of economic impact studies and clinical effectiveness and safety of pharmaceuticals and services. He has published key papers on the economic evaluation of clinical pharmacy services over the last 2 decades. He's a leader in pharmacy system outcomes and policy research. He has also served as an associate editor of the Journal of Comparative Effectiveness Research. So it's our pleasure to welcome Dr. Schumock.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and begin. We'd like to learn more about your journey in your development in your career to your current position as a leader. And then reflecting on that, you may wish to highlight key events or persons who influence you in this journey.
Okay, well, just starting from the beginning, I guess I'm originally from the state of Washington, and I went to pharmacy school at Washington State University. I think early on in my pharmacy school career, I got interested in writing. I worked in the Drug Information Center at the school and kind of developed a passion, I guess, for writing, scientific writing, and that's something that has continued throughout my career. And I think because I spent time doing it early on and felt comfortable with it, it's something that I have always enjoyed. And so it's always been kind of a part of what I have enjoyed and part of the passion I have in my career. But also early in my pharmacy school, I worked as an intern at a hospital in my hometown and worked closely with the director of pharmacy. And so I also developed a interest in pharmacy management kind of early in my training. And so that's another thing that's followed me, I think, throughout my career is, having the interest and desire to implement changes and be part of the process of improvement in whatever organization I'm in, and also to be able to influence and work with people in a managerial kind of capacity. So in pharmacy school, I think I decided early that I was interested in management. And so again, that kind of drove some of the decisions I made later on. At the time, this was the late 1980s, the PharmD degree was becoming more widely adopted, and some schools were going to the All PharmD program. And so I also saw kind of the writing on the wall in terms of needing to have that degree as well, because I was in a Bachelor's of Pharmacy program. So I decided to do a 2-year PharmD degree after the bachelor's degree. So I went to the University of Washington, which had a very good program that was combined with a residency. And then when I finished that, I was still interested in administration, but also had developed expertise and skills from a clinical pharmacy standpoint. And so I was interested in combining those two pieces together. And so I identified programs across the country that focused on training managers who specialized in clinical pharmacy programs or implementation, and ended up at the University of Illinois here. At the time, the person who was running the program, Dick Hutchinson, was fairly well known and kind of on the cutting edge in terms of implementing new pharmacy programs, clinical programs, and evaluating those programs. And so I got involved in that. And that's another kind of theme, I think, over my career that I've focused on, always wanting to be able to demonstrate the impact that pharmacists have and measure that so that it could be used to expand and justify our services. And a lot of the research and publications that I did over time focused on that, as you mentioned. So I stayed on after doing a fellowship here as a clinical director of kind of clinical services at our hospital, and was again continue to publish as much as I could because that was an interest and passion, but also the management piece I continued to focus on, and eventually decided I wanted to be a director of a hospital pharmacy. So I left and went up to Wisconsin, and I was director of pharmacy at a hospital in Wisconsin for about 5 years. And then eventually came back to Chicago in a more research tenure track position here at the University of Illinois in the College of Pharmacy, and really have been in that ever since. That was in let's see, 2000. Yeah, in 2000. So I've been in this capacity since then, and moved my way up from a director of a center for pharmacoeconomic research to department head, and now eventually to dean. But I think, again, across all of that time, I've continued to try to focus on publishing and being a manager and helping others implement programs and so forth. So that's it in a nutshell.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. What do you think will be your legacy in 20 years or 20 or 30 years? And when to answer that, because legacy is daunting for people, but reflect on all the things you've done. What are you most proud of in terms of your contributions that have helped to advance the pharmacy profession?
Yeah, well, it's a hard question to answer. I mean, I'm not one to really focus on legacy so much, or it's not even something I really think about. I mean, I mentioned before that my interests and passion and those have led to maybe where I've spent the most time, and so that productivity maybe is the legacy that you leave, and whether it's in the record of publications. And some of those have, I think, been impactful for the profession, or I kind of had several different streams of research that I've been involved in and published on. I mentioned the studies of the impact of pharmacists and justifying pharmacy services, and that I know has been used by national professional organizations to help advance pharmacy. I know it's been used by government agencies also to make decisions about payment for pharmacy services. And so I do know that those efforts have had an impact, and I'm grateful for that. I don't, and whether that's a legacy or not, I don't know. But other areas where I've published it more extensively and have been kind of pharmacoeconomics, more the study of drugs. And then that work has led to, I guess, information that's helped drugs, particular products or drugs be used more effectively or more efficiently. And then the other area I published in a lot is more around drug safety. And I know some of that work has also been widely adopted. There's one paper I did in preventable adverse drug reactions, which is actually the most cited paper that I have, which was, at the time I published it, was really just kind of a quick brainstorm kind of paper. There wasn't a lot of research behind it. And so sometimes little things that you do and you don't even recognize at the time turn out to be influential or get widely adopted. So I think that legacy of publications is one thing. The other, again, going back to my interest in management and leadership, that may or may not, there's the record of that. I think is more in the people that you leave behind, or who you influence. So I hope that people that I have worked with, either as colleagues or who have trained under me, who have gone on to good careers and have impacted their institutions. That legacy, I hope will, last into the future. And that's probably more what I'm more proud of, is just the interactions I have with people, and that impact that they have.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So what advice do you have for students in their journey, professional journey, especially as they develop as leaders? And leaders, I often am referring to persons who help to advance, like in this case, advance the profession.
Yeah, no, I think what you said at the end there is really important, Terry. I did write some notes down here. I'm just gonna find those, but I always have thought of, like, I've never actually thought of myself necessarily as a leader. And I think leadership can be defined many different ways. Individuals can lead in their own spheres, by their actions, by example. You can be kind of a silent leader just by the fact that you, perform in a way that influences other people because they see the outcomes of your contributions and so forth, and they model those. So I think, leadership doesn't have to be, that charismatic or extroverted person who's in a, CEO position or whatever. It can be at the ground level. And so I always encourage people that I work with to think about, what it is that they can do to better those around them and better their situation. And that, I think, is leadership. I think, so I think that when I talk to students, I tell them that, just because maybe you don't have the personality that you sometimes associate with leaders, doesn't mean that you should not think about leadership in yourself, or, and then the other thing I say is that, because I think this is very true for me, that you can develop these kinds of skills. You're not normally, a lot of people are not born with the skills that you might use in these kinds of positions. So you can develop this over time. There's obviously there's lots of courses. Sorry, my phone just was going on. I'm going to turn this off. Hopefully you can edit this recording. Again, you can, develop these things over time. You have a whole career to do this. So as a student, don't worry about having to do everything at once. I guess just other words of advice I would have for students is to take advantage of the people around you. There's so many great people in your school, where you might be working, who can mentor you. And I think all of us, who are at the stage of the career that I'm at, or Terry, that it's the people who provided you with advice and took you under their wing and helped you along, that you remember, and you keep in contact too with over your career, and you can always go back to and ask for advice. So seeking and using people around you as mentors, and then I think making sure that what you do is something that you enjoy. There's, pharmacy is a great career. There's so many things that you can do. And I think for anybody, there's opportunities for you to find a passion, something that really drives you. And whether it's working with patients, for me, it was publishing and kind of implementing change and management. But you will find those kinds of things, and try to keep a hold of those throughout your career, because that will make you happy and more fulfilled, I think. So.
Very good. Thank you very much. So as this is, we're learning about the history of the profession, the transformation of the profession, and the leaders behind it. As we study the decade of the 2020s, one of the key events in that decade will probably be COVID-19 pandemic. And as other key events in our history, key events that occur external to us shapes our profession and influence our profession. How do you see that, especially being an opportunity for our profession?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it has been helpful for the profession. I think it's opened the eyes of the public to the importance of pharmacists and pharmacies. Um, I think that, in some states, we've been able to get some legislation changed to allow pharmacists to do more. Some of that was through executive orders, and in other cases, more permanent. Hopefully, those changes, even if they were temporary, maybe become permanent later. Um, so I do think it's been good. I mean, things like COVID testing, may not be necessarily exactly what we were anticipating, like as the next thing for pharmacists, but perhaps it just opens doors, or opens people's minds about what pharmacists can do. And I do think that there's been, plenty of new opportunities that have come about because of this. So I think, like the saying goes, with every crisis, there's opportunity. And I think that there clearly has been opportunities for our profession. I don't know if we've taken advantage of it as much as we could. And there's certainly other things I think that we'd like pharmacists to be able to do that haven't necessarily come to fruition in the COVID pandemic time period. But I'm hopeful that this will help the profession move forward and expand what we do. I think that expansion of pharmacists' roles and activities is really where we need to focus, and this has helped in that regard. So I think it's a positive thing.
Very good. Excellent. I appreciate that. Well, Dr. Schumock, thank you very much for your time and being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Terry.